How old are you?
31.
So we are both 31.
92?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We are in our 30s. I'm Emily P. Faith, and you are about to meet anxiety advocate, doctor of chiropractic, Alaskan, nervous system expert, griever, dreamer, and my friend, Dr. Sara Zwink. This girl slid into my DMs, by the way, is the story. Actually, you slid into my Venmo. Do you remember this?
Yeah, and you're the first person I've used that tactic with, and it took a little bit more effort of stalking than I would like to admit to find your personal Venmo account, because you had a really rough day based off of, if I recall correctly, based off of some feedback on some social media content of yours, as happens, especially when you're talking about vulnerable things.
Yes.
In either of our fields. And I was like, I really want to get to know her. And I thought maybe I had already like DM'd you or something, but we hadn't ever connected. I don't even know that you had responded to me. And I was like, I'm not going to give up on her yet, though. I think she's just like me and like wants to respond but doesn't know it yet.
I want to respond, but I forget that I want to respond if I don't respond immediately.
And I was like, and this is going to be my last effort. That is, I'm just going to Venmo her like $5 for like, I think I said a cup of tea because you've had a rough day.
Yes.
And I was like, this can go two ways. This will solidify her never talking to me. Or this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
And here we are.
And I don't know if you can guess which way it went.
Drop your votes in
Right.
in the comments below. It was so important to me that you recognize that I just might have needed a little like reminder that you existed. But I remember, like, first of all, thank you, because that, looking back, let me take you back to that day. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have now become the worst person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I have made somebody feel bad about themselves on the internet by just me speaking about my existence.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, like a year and a half, I don't feel like that anymore, unless I
Good.
need to, but I was feeling so bad, and I felt like I needed to apologize, and I was so dysregulated. I remember my body, I was just like, I'm going to throw up. It's all I can think about. And so I made this apology video, which I look back, I'm like, I don't know if I needed to do that. But I wanted to explain myself, and I did. And then, I get to my DMs, and Sarah's like, I found your Venmo and sent you something to go get like a little coffee or a tea. And I was like, I'm obsessed. And then you said you were, because I don't think had you moved to Dallas at that point? I don't think you even moved here. This was in the summer, and I think you were like, I'm going to move here. And then I think you reached back out, you're like, I'm here.
That feels appropriate. Yeah. It was either I was very, very freshly here, or I was pre-planning my relationships.
I really like your style. We have to a little bit. A
lot of it. You can plan the introduction. I couldn't have faked the vibes. Like, we obviously had to have aligned, but that relationship was absolutely calculated. It just worked. We actually did have similar enough values that it continued to become a true friendship. Also, it was a calculated DM. It was a calculated coffee date. It was a calculated where do I want to go with this next?
But that's what I've been talking about in like some forms of my TikTok life, is friendship in your 30s in particular, but like friendship and how we actually do have to be active participants in that happening in our lives. Because so many people that I work with that come in and they're like, I don't know how to make friends as an adult. And one of my first questions is like, well, what are you doing? And there's often not an answer, and that's okay. And it's a good place to start. But I think you do have to say, okay, if this is something I want, how can I find a way to make this happen? And what I appreciate about you is you hang out with lots of people in many places, but like, I don't want to go to like a climbing gym and start making friends like with other women climbers. I don't want to do something active. I want to get coffee. And I appreciate that you like also were like, hey, I'm going to throw this out here, and however this works out, like we'll let it unfold.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is that I think there's it's all a balancing act. Like, there's all finding the harmony in it. And you have to know the calculation really comes into play at the beginning. And then it comes down to like, is this actually someone that I was right about wanting to be in a relationship with, or is it taking too much energy to even share an experience with them? Which I think turning 30 does do something, because, and everyone's journey is a little different. Like, I graduated chiropractic school at 31 and a few weeks. 30 in a few weeks. Doesn't matter. But I think that a lot of people come out of college or even grad school in their late 20s, and that we have like these kind of floundering years that are also an important part of the journey. And even though I was just about to graduate at 30, I still felt some shift of like, I don't regret at all what the last decade has been. And I think I want to be a little more intentional, because now I'm seeing just how fast a decade can go.
No one's telling me I'm young anymore. You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
In your 20s, we're like, oh, just wait. Oh, you're so young. And that can feel really good, and also can feel really like that's the narrative. Like, well, I'm really young. And 30s feel, like you said, like there's an intentionality behind it. But I am wondering, like, is it going to feel more clear than my 20s ever felt?
I have two thoughts, and they're kind of contradictory, because my first initial response was, I think yes. Because I think now we have data to pull from our 20s.
Yeah.
And it's experience. Like we literally just have more perspective to base life off of. Because when we were 20-something, we only had literally the 2 decades. And now we have a whole nother one to throw in there. Yeah. So it's like we can, and we've also probably been through harder stuff. Probably. Or at least different things. And at least for me, that's brought a whole different clarity to the 1.5 years of my 30s so far. And I also think that hindsight's 20/20. So like at 40, we'll probably look back and be like, oh, how young and naive was I at 31?
Have you received your message?
I see it. I see the little one message bubble. It's a video.
It is a video.
Oh no! Do you ever? So I rewatch my old YouTube videos sometimes.
Of course we do. Of course we do.
So this was my 24th birthday. And I don't know what clip you just sent me, but I do know for a fact that I went to go get that's the same minivan I still drive, that I went to go get the mail, and I didn't have a bra on because I was very much in like a no bra at all phase. Mm-hmm. Now I'm in like a bralette phase for years, but at that time I was like, fuck all bras. Yeah. And I do remember I get to the post office, which was like 25 minutes away, and I realized I didn't have the key. And it was like a small town post office, and they like normally, because my mother had done this, they're like, I'm sorry, we can't give you your mail. Like, you have to actually have the key to your box. All this to say, the gentleman absolutely gave me the mail. Of course. And I told Mom this story, not even knowing. I was like, yeah, I didn't have the key, so I had to ask him for the mail. And Mom's like, they don't do that.
Yeah, it's like illegal.
They've denied me before. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And she literally was like, it's because you didn't have a bra on. I was like, that's probably true. And also, I got the mail. So, moral of the story.
And birthday vibes. You were just exuding like who you were.
I love a birthday. People who don't like birthdays, that's okay. I just can't relate at all.
We're gonna watch this video.
I had so much anxiety about turning 24, I would say about a month ago. But it ended about a month ago, but I've had this anxiety for like the past, 12 months. And 24 starts to sound older, It's no longer like, oh, you just turned 20. 23 is like the early 20s. 24 is mid-20s. But like, whatever. I mean, there's hopefully so much life ahead of me.
Wow. Do you have follow-up questions? Because I have thoughts.
Well, my first follow-up question is like, what would you say to her?
Oh man, where's my tissue box? It's over there. So this is a video I've watched probably in the past couple months.
Really?
Because that video was such like this exuberant time of life. And the past, if I'm 31 now, the past 7 years, not all of them, some of them, in the last like 2 in particular, have been fucking horrible. That for the longest time, like for most of my life, even including to like my mid-20s, that was Sarah. Like that was my energy. And it's interesting because I was chatting with an ex about this very briefly. And he was like, don't worry, I'm sure that spark will come back to your eyes at some point soon. And I was like, I don't know. I think the last 7 years have developed into exactly who I am at 31, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it is also kind of like encouraging and humbling at the same time to like revisit where I was, because there are aspects of her that I would love to bring back into my life. And there are many aspects of me now that I I mean, I guess you could say, like, I wish 24-year-old Sarah knew. The confidence that I have now is night and day difference with 24-year-old Sarah, and I couldn't have taught her that lest these 7 years happen.
Did anyone ever not like the sparkle in the eye, Sarah?
I don't think Sarah, in a way, did. Actually,
why?
I think that, well, to answer your question, probably. I'm sure. I think that was the definition of annoying. And actually, this is funny. So I just came out of a chamber meeting just before this, like a young professional meeting, and I Snapchatted my boyfriend, and I was like, the annoying Sarah came out, and I'm trying to figure out how I feel about that. Because I think I talked more than I wanted to. And I'm like, after that meeting, so like an hour ago, I'm trying to navigate. I was like, but do I care about that? And is there like a morality to that? And why is that bothering me? Because I think 24-year-old Sarah, there was a very pure excitement to her existence. And there was a lot of compensation for like the actual lack of confidence that was just like coming out as extreme extrovertedness and extreme like hype energy all the time. And I think I really struggled with like marrying confidence and extrovertedness, and like what was actually me being just high energy, and what was me totally compensating for a deep insecurity. And that I don't know that I have the answer at 31. I do feel like I have a much more deeper understanding of like what does it feel like when I'm stepping into one or the other. So like I have no problem if I'm the most chatty person in the room, unless I'm feeling internally that it's like not coming from a place of confidence and excitement. And I think in the last meeting it was a little bit of like, I don't know that I would say insecurity, but maybe it was almost like a little just unsure of almost what was happening, and it was like almost a protective measure. It's like, oh, I know if I'm like chirpy and kind of silly.
I would say like the past 2 years. I don't know if it was COVID. I don't know what it was, but something I started feeling insecure about myself for the first time. And like,
really?
Not like I always had like insecurities, but
Sure.
it was like I'd never had social anxiety before, where I'd come home and think about everything that I said and how I was presenting myself. And I do that now, and it's gotten a little better, but it was rough.
Interesting.
It was rough.
I've had the opposite experience. So that's...
You're thinking less about what you're saying? I want that.
But if I may, I think part of it stemmed from just like, well, I don't fucking care. And not in like I don't care anymore, but in kind of like there's been so much emotional exhaustion in this past year that I'm like, this isn't like, I don't fucking care.
Your priorities have shifted.
Yeah.
In your brain.
Yeah. I also think, and we'll just dive into this. So I recognize now that so many of my self-conscious issues, because I would definitely describe myself as a very insecure person for most of my life. And I think probably I'm probably still more insecure than people assume. However, I don't think I would identify it. That doesn't feel like I'm insecure. I'm sure just people might think that there's none. And I'm like, well, there's some. All that to say, I recognize now that my mother was very hyper aware, how you presented yourself conscious. Like it was the classic, like, well, hold on, I have to put on my face. Like that was the phrase, like, can't leave the house until I've put on my face, which is like makeup and not like I was born and raised in Alaska. My parents are from New York. So like not like the Southern, like coiffed, but just like, I can't be a mess. I can't be seen in my organic state.
Because we transitioned here, you started a series called Going Through My Dead Hoarder Mom's Closet.
Yeah.
Was her having all these clothes a part of this, like how you present yourself?
No, I don't think so, because most of them weren't worn.
This was just shopping.
This was
coping.
This was what I recognize, and you probably have a better grasp on the actual, like, what term is the right term. This was from a nervous system dysregulation perspective. I'm like, oh, this is her trying to self-soothe. This is a presentation of depression. This is her trying to find, back to the self, like her trying to fill that kind of hole in her chest kind of feeling. Mm-hmm. And that little dopamine hit of pressing purchase.
And then it coming to your door. And
yeah.
Then maybe you open it, or maybe you don't.
And like the dopamine hit of like, oh, maybe one day I'll be the person who. Because she has some weird ass shit and I love it.
I highly recommend you going back and looking, because truly the styles are so varied. It was like...
There's no rhyme or reason.
No color analysis done here. No, like, finding your shape that works for you. Like, I really appreciate her creativity and openness.
My mother was the most creative person I've ever met, and that will probably ring true the rest of my life. Like, I would love for that to be challenged. I want to meet even more creative people and still be like, nah.
It's her.
Yeah.
Take me back to the moment that you decided to do that series.
So,
how did that happen?
well, I don't know that you've noticed, but it did not get cross-posted to Instagram. None of them. And that is on purpose because I think that TikTok is the perfect platform for something as almost like brash as going through my dead hoarder mother's clothes.
Yeah.
And I've gotten comments of like, how dare you speak about your mother that way? I would never. I loved my mom. Okay.
Losing a parent in your 30s feels really unfair. Mm-hmm. And I know people who've lost parents really like early on, like teenage years and then early 20s, but 30s, I feel like for me anyway, I'm at a time where I'm really thinking about who my parents were at my age in a way that I wasn't thinking, my parents were 25, like right now it's like in my 30s, I'm going, oh, my parents, had they bought a house or were they married? Did they have kids? What were they doing? Like trying to understand my childhood through their adulthood, through my adulthood. And I'm wondering like what that's like for you to think about your mom and her not being here in this time of your life.
I think that that question's going to kind of answer itself as I continue to go through my 30s, right? But the thing that stands out to me most as someone considering if I ever have kids is like, I never thought I would have to do that without my own parent. That's what really like feels like a nice little thorn. It's also weird because 30's a weird time to learn to lose a parent because on one hand it's like, okay, well we made it through childhood and like young adulthood. So I'm like, oh, you just kind of assume that like you'll make it through this.
Yeah, like this we've made it over that tragedy hump.
It's like it wasn't my childhood. Like I had them for most of my life, well, for a good chunk of life. But I'm not old enough to have lost a parent at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think growing up, my dad lost his dad when his dad was 72. And in the family, that was always like, yeah, we lost your grandpa pretty young. And then mom was, 63, I think.
Yeah.
And then being 31 now, knowing my mom was 63, I was like, my life's half over. What if? I don't fucking know.
We don't know.
I mean, of course, like that's always the question. But now I really have like some perspective to put on like, oh, I have lived half of my mother's lifetime.
When did you decide to become the anxiety advocate on social media?
The second person asked me this, and I don't actually remember. Because I keep being like, oh, last year. But no, it was at least 2 years ago. It was when I knew I was going to move to Dallas. It was when I knew I was going to work with the other doc here. And we'll be transparent. I knew that I wanted to have some sort of niche simply from a marketing standpoint.
Sure.
And I also knew that the very, very niche type of chiropractic that I practice, which chiropractic's already a black sheep niche profession, and now I practice a really weird iteration of it, was the only thing that like truly shifted my experience with anxiety. And I don't get panic attacks anymore. I don't have to curl up shaking, probably throwing up, with my mind going to a lot of places.
Well, I didn't know this, that people didn't know. I didn't know that people didn't know what I'm about to say, which is, yeah. Okay. I said that in the most confusing way. No way. I didn't know that people didn't realize that you could not qualify for an anxiety or depression diagnosis anymore. Like it is possible for you not to meet the criteria. So I was talking to clients who were like, well, I have this and that's just, I've always had it my whole life. And I'm like, well, do you currently experiencing anxiety symptoms? They're like, no, but I have this diagnosis. And it's like, no, actually, like, this is a wonderful thing and a really good thing to remind ourselves of is that this is not a life sentence and it feels like it.
I think that that's a good thing to remind people, but more so I think that that's something they don't even know.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you didn't
you're
know.
Almost educating on.
I didn't know, and I didn't realize my clients didn't know.
Well, as someone who lived through it, I just literally thought that's what life was. Or at least was what my life was. It wasn't until they stopped happening that I was like, oh, you're telling me it didn't have to be that way for almost 20 years? That would have been cool.
That would have been really nice. What changed?
I got under this type of care that I do now.
There we go. I appreciate that you have said somewhere, I don't have exactly where I pulled this from, but you said you don't need to know why. You just need to know how to support yourself through it. Like, you don't need to know why anxiety is happening. You don't need to know do you still
I do
believe that?
Yeah, I do. And this is slightly different because I think we approach, if we're talking about anxiety, our sides of our care are almost like polar opposite because, and maybe literally correct me, my thought with therapy is like very much diving into some of the why. And then from my side of it is I don't ever need to know your why as to why you feel anxious. I just need to know neurologically how to support you and if you need my support. Because I could tell you why my panic attack started from what I understand. Which I would tell you, my little brother had a seizure and I literally I didn't know what to fucking do with that information. And it was that next night because I remember asking my mom, I was like, Mom, what is it like to have a seizure? Because the night prior, I couldn't stop shaking. And I was like, do you know? Like, are you aware of it? And she's like, no, it's like you're blacked out. Like, you're not, it's like you're dreaming. You don't know. And I'm like, literally, I remember thinking, I'm like, okay, I'm fine. I didn't have a seizure. It's fine. Like,
I just had a panic attack.
I didn't talk to Mom about it. She didn't ask why. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't also having a seizure.
But also, for you to witness something that was really extreme and then for your body to, you would have had to be feeling something really significant for you to think that those two could be similar too.
Yeah, I literally couldn't stop my body from shaking.
Yeah, right.
That's how it continued to present. And it was, I say was, it is a was, but it never didn't. It was always terrifying.
True or false? You went viral for a now deleted thirst trap. True or false?
True.
Sarah, you said somewhere that I'm going to have to learn how to cite my sources there. But I put it in quotes. The older I get, the less I believe in myself. You've said this recently. Or maybe it was on a YouTube. It was a YouTube video.
Allow me to reintroduce myself post.
Yeah, it was. It was a recent because it was.
Yes.
These posts drive me a little bit crazy too, not just you, but in general, because I go from, I'm looking at the image and then I have to go read the text. And I'm like, I need, this to move quicker. But I did take the time to read this. And that is what you said. And they allow me to reintroduce myself. Okay. The older I get, the less I believe in myself. Do you feel like that's true today in this moment?
No, but here's the deal. I think that I remember writing that and I was having a rough day when I wrote it. And I remember thinking, maybe I shouldn't add this as a fact because I don't believe that this is majority of the time applicable. But I remember but it is right now. And so it's going in. And I have subsequently reread that post. I reconsume my own content I am my biggest fan.
Good.
So maybe that answers your question right there. And I've reread it and I've almost changed it for the fact that I don't know that it applies most of the time, but I want to leave it because of the sheer fact that it does sometimes. And I think it's a yes and it's it's holding two truths that are seemingly combative. But it's well, they can both be true.
Yeah. I flagged it because it was I flagged this because I was this is there's something about it that resonates with I feel more confident than ever as I step into this new young adult. I think we're truly in young adulthood now. I think 20s was not young adulthood. I think that was just
extended childhood.
Yeah, extended childhood. Especially I came from a pretty privileged background, so I had an extended childhood. And now in adulthood, I don't know if I believe in myself less, but I ask more questions than I did before. And I think that is really helpful sometimes. But then when it's the other side of that coin, it can be extremely debilitating.
If I remember where I was when I wrote that caption as well, was back to this year being hard and back to a handful of these last few years being very hard for me, that and this is something I guess I do still struggle with, the not wanting to compare myself based off of my own track record while also being realistic. So maybe almost to what you're saying, to where it's well, statistically speaking, I don't follow through on X, Y, and Z. So like, why would I believe that I would? Whereas at the same time, like using that as awareness of ourself while also not now deciding that has to be like a self-perpetuation.
We can know something, and then that's not the narrative that we continue forward with forever, every day, every moment.
Right. And I think, like probably many of us, there are days when that is harder to realize than others. Like it's there. I definitely still have days where it's like all I judge myself based off of is everything I've previously done and or probably not done. And then it's like those are days that it's harder to remind myself that, well, that doesn't ever have to remain to be true.
That's why I hate, there's, sometimes like the only person you need to compare yourself to is yourself. And I'm like,
also hate that.
Oh my gosh, no, that is not helpful. That is not, maybe for some people, but if you're like me and if you're like Sarah, that is I cannot compare myself to former versions of myself. It is so unhealthy for me.
I also wonder if it's healthy for anyone because it's simply a different human. I have an entire different set of skills I do now than even a week ago.
Facts. Sarah, could we do a little, can you nervous system check me?
I can.
Can you use your gun? Let's get out of here. Let's do that.
Okay, perfect.
Great. I'm so nervous because, what are you doing?
Okay. Would you like me to give you the patient spiel?
Yeah.
Okay. This is what we call in the office functional nervous system testing.
Okay.
Because it's going to show me a glimpse of the function of your nervous system. So kind of similar to like an EKG, EEG is saying heart and brain function, right? This is showing me that nervous system function via infrared thermography. So we got two little barrels here. They're going to take bilateral temperature. So they're taking temperature on each side of your spine. And they're comparing and we're seeing, is there that balance and general harmony and adaptability that a well-adaptable system has? Or are we possibly, like many people and almost everyone who finds themselves in the office because of our pre-qualification system, very much stuck in a state that's not adapting ideally and possibly exacerbating their health issues.
Is me being nervous right now an indicator that I might be the latter? I'm so scared. This is like, it's not the same, but it's kind of when I did a parasite cleanse or I did the foot bath, and then you can like see in the foot bath, allegedly, what is inside of you. And so this feels a little like, it feels like a little vulnerable.
And that's fair. And there are some different aspects to it because we're humans who it can be super normal for us to be in a stress state and therefore present with a stress scan. The question is, like, in 5 minutes, is your scan changed? Because what we consistently see for people who aren't doing great in a health standpoint, a lot of like autoimmune and chronic health conditions, the scan's not changing. And we know this, like we're very dynamic, adaptable humans. Things should constantly be shifting.
Yeah.
And adapting to whatever the demand for the situation is. And if we're noticing their body literally can't adapt, then it's an easy enough understanding to like, well, no wonder I'm struggling.
Yeah, that must be so freeing for people too, to say like, no wonder.
There are people almost more often than not who get like clear scans from their neurologists and clear scans from whatever system that might be bothering them. And they keep getting the answer of, well, nothing seems wrong. And they're like, no, but something's not right.
Right.
And this has been the first place for a lot of those people that I'm like, well, right, this scan isn't normal. And by normal, I don't just mean like within some obtuse normal range. I mean like it's actually reading as inadaptable. Like, no wonder your reality is your reality. That makes sense to me. You know how many of us, we get into our 30s and we're like, why are things harder? Why am I slower to heal? Why am I more tired? Why am I more stressed? When maybe not too many external things have actually changed. And it could be, if we're now like in our third decade of a system that's trying to survive only, it could be that that's just getting harder and harder for it to do. I'm always really cautious to not say good and bad scans because that's not how it works. And at the same time, I've seen far worse.
Great.
So we're seeing that swoop all the way out by almost a full degree here. We know that's not an ideal existence, and it's indicative that the nervous system is really struggling to balance itself.
The thing is, Sarah, is that this was similar when I went to my holistic functional medicine naturopath doctor, where I go, what am I not recognizing? Because I'm like sleeping great. I like what I'm eating feels good. It feels like my digestion is working well. Like, I think this is where I go, am I not seeing something when I feel like things are better now than they, like, I could clearly look to the past parts of my life and go like, I was definitely in a different place then.
One, that's also where it comes back to, like, does that scan stick or do you balance out? And are we seeing change, right? So now that's one thing for it to be a snapshot, but this is where we take many, many scans to see how ultimately does your system go through the world. And my other thought was, do you remember that very first conversation we had when you walked into the office?
No. Oh, I have ADHD. Sarah, we have to say goodbye to each other. And I know, I'm sad about it. It's been a great episode. And I think the reason I wanted to have you on in particular to talk about being a woman in your like real adulthood 30s is because I see you putting out, like, so much of what you put out has been helpful for me and where I am and what I'm focusing on. So I just want to, like, if you ever feel like it's not worth it, or if you have those days where you're like, does this matter? It really does. It's been so helpful to me in my life. And if it's helpful to me, then I know it's helpful to the 60,000 other people that are out there watching you. And just thank you.
I think that because of how I feel internally when people tell me that, I think there must be some level of me needing to hear that more often than I consciously admit to myself.
Like, yeah, what comes up?
Yeah, like I don't feel like I have a normal thought of like, is this worth it? If anything, just because I know from my own experience that of course it is. And then when people say thank you for what you do, even if it's just on social media, I'm like, man, that feels good. Like I didn't know I needed to hear that.
Yeah. We have to tell people these things more often. I really do. It's really important.
Yeah.
One way that I like to close down that's a little bit playful is with a magic box. So if you'll reach up with me to grab my magic box and we'll pull it down.
Got it.
Here it is.
Okay,
I have
perfect.
to open it up. And it, yeah. Oh, it's
Oh,
a
creepy.
lid.
You didn't know it was a lid?
Not until you did
Mine
that.
is lidded.
It's a lid. Well, ours is a lid then.
Yeah.
What is the lid made of?
It's like a trunk.
I was thinking it was wooden in some form, but
absolutely.
okay, good. In this box is anything that you can take with you for the rest of your day or weekend that's going to help you just like get through the day, or maybe even more than get through. And then you can leave anything here that you don't want to take that could just like be left in this space. We'll do the leaving first. But you already have an idea. She's so fast, y'all.
I would like, do you give context to these things or do we just leave them?
Whatever you want.
So
you can, if you want to honor us with your context, we would love it.
Perfect.
But if you're feeling private today, you can.
No,
yeah,
absolutely. I possibly to no surprise am on a couple different boards of which require me to send emails that I may not be super timely with. And I've had this internal story in my head all week of like, yeah, this is what you do, Sarah. Like, you don't do things on time. And I'm just going to leave that there.
Leave that there. Where did that live in your body?
Oh.
Like your head, your heart?
Anywhere? I really feel it like it's like a cap.
Yeah. It's like, take that cap off.
Yeah, I don't like this cap.
Put it there.
Ugly.
Fuck the cap. I want to leave. I just really appreciate you. This is why I think it's important for people to talk to each other, because you saying like, I left this meeting and there's a part of me is like, did talkative Sarah come out or crazy Sarah? I don't remember the word that you used. And I have that part so much. And so it was just really helpful to know that that's not an isolate, like I'm not alone in that feeling. And I would like to leave that questioning aside. And that lives deep in my chest.
Bye.
Yeah. What do you want to take with you?
I want to take with me just a little more pride about how great of a job I am doing.
Yeah. Take that.
Like a little more recognition in myself.
There's like tons of it in there, but you can take
Perfect.
it. Yeah, take a little bit. I want to take with me, I was feeling very nervous about doing this and the setup. And this is the first time that, like, I've done podcasting before, but I've never done a video element. And I was feeling nervous that I wouldn't be able to feel I was worried I wouldn't be able to be present, and then like also being like very conscious about how I look on camera. And I don't know if it's the co-regulation happening, but I'm taking with me the like, you did something new today and it didn't kill you. Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Sara Zwink, thank you so much for being on In Our 30s. And I'm so excited to see what life with you in our 30s is going to be for the both of us.
Emily Faith, thank you for having me, to say the least. This has been a true pleasure. This is thank you.
Thank you. And thank you. Just so people know, we're ending the session in, what is this called? Relaxation room?
It's our zero gravity suite.
Zero gravity suite. So let's just see y'all.
A little foot shot.
I can't go. Okay, here we go.
Oh,
okay.
okay.
Zero gravity. Oh.